Hey everybody, welcome to the Internet chapter. I know, we're finally at the Internet chapter. So we're going to spend a couple class periods on this, mainly because every medium that we've talked about so far this term converges onto the Internet, right? Everything that we've talked about, you can access online. So I love that we talk about the Internet towards the end because it summarizes everything, it wraps everything up. So we're starting with the First Amendment, and here's why. The First Amendment was written sometime in 1780 something, okay? When they talk about the press here, when the First Amendment was written, it's about Joe down on the corner with his printing press. But now the First Amendment has to cover books, newspapers, magazines, the internet, radio, television, movies, everything we've talked about. So that's going to be one of the discussions in class. Does the First Amendment need to be updated? All right, so let's talk about the internet, which really, we love it. We love it, right? It's such an integral part of our lives. So here's how your book kind of summarizes it, and we'll do an activity based around this in class. Every new medium goes through the same evolution where it's the new novelty stage, then it goes through an entrepreneurial stage, how can it be used, and then we're in the mass medium stage where everybody has it. So the internet now is in a mass media stage, right? Almost everyone has it, almost. So how did it start? Well, like all good technology, it started with the military, started with the Department of Defense during the Cold War. They wanted to make sure that if there was indeed an attack by the Soviet Union, that our military bases could still talk to each other. And so they connected the computers through ARPANET, Advanced Research Property Net, a little bit of trivia. And there's different kinds of networks, right? So it started as a centralized network, then decentralized, now it's distributed. So, for example, if you take out the middle computer in the centralized network, you've ruined the whole network. But in a distributed network, you can just take one out and it still exists. So if your phone breaks, it doesn't kill the internet. So we're a distributed network now. In the beginning phases of the internet, when it started stretching out from the military, it went to big research institutions like Carnegie Mellon, Case Western Reserve, University of Illinois, UCLA, Harvard, etc., MIT. This is when the universities started talking to each other also. And this was in 1971. So remember, the internet came before the World Wide Web. Think of the internet as the ocean, and the World Wide Web is the boat that helps you sail around it. Okay? There's differences. And this is actually a visual representation of internet users based on country. We are the neon green and China is red. So this is what the network looks like now. So your book says there are 3 innovations that make the internet different. It's interactive, meaning that we are in control of where we go and we can provide immediate feedback. We call up content on demand. Like, how great is that? You want to watch something? Just plug it in and you're going to watch it. It's like magic. But I think the main difference is that we are producers, not just consumers of internet content. You know, we can't say that about movies or the radio or magazines. I mean, maybe to an extent, but it's nothing like the content that we generate on especially social media platforms online. So I want to make sure you get the word convergence, that all other media are accessible through the internet. So what's the technology? Number 1, digital communication. Number 2, microprocessors. You have to have a microprocessor to read the digital communication. And you want to be familiar with Moore's law, that computer chip power doubles about every 18 months. And if you notice, like, computers used to be enormous and super expensive and super heavy. And now, you know, with this, we've got as much technology here as they used to send people to the moon. It's crazy. And number 3, fiber optic cables. This was huge because before, information or the binary communication traveled slowly. Now it was zipping through fiber optic cables, can deliver every issue ever made of the Wall Street Journal in less than a second. It's amazing. And this was really even before Wi-Fi. So you also want to make sure that you're familiar with the digital divide. The digital divide is what your book refers to as how some people who have the internet and some people don't. Might not seem that big of a deal to you, right? But think. Where did you apply to go to university? Online. Where did you learn about scholarships? Online. Where do you learn about jobs? Online. The digital divide is getting wider and wider because those with technology have everything at their fingertips. Those without technology are falling behind. So you might hear politicians refer to the digital divide and how it needs to be closed up to try to bring everybody up. So this is going to be a juicy conversation in class because we're going to talk about what is illegal online and how difficult it is to legislate online behavior and why. So I'm going to tell you a story that happened here in St. Louis in 2006. A woman named Lori Drew set up a fake MySpace account to to pretend to be a middle school boy, to flirt with a frenemy of her daughters named Megan Meyer. So Lori Drew, posing as a middle school boy, flirted with Megan. Megan liked it. And when the boy / Lori Drew broke up with Megan and told Megan the world would be better off without her, Megan hanged herself when she was 13. Now, this was one of the first times that people talked about cyberbullying, which is a phrase I hate because it's not illegal to be a jerk. But this brought up a lot of interesting discussions because Lori Drew broke no laws. All she did was violate MySpace's terms of service because she pretended to be someone she wasn't. So this led to the Megan Meyer Cyberbullying Act. This did not pass, but I want you to read this, and we'll talk about this in class. And I made this red on purpose because how do you define intent, intimidate, harass, cause substantial emotional distress? How do you define that? Because for me, it kind of depends on what mood I'm in if it causes me substantial emotional distress, right? This law and laws like this mean well, but they're very difficult to define, and they would be even harder to enforce for a lot of reasons, which we'll talk about in class. So these were the biggest websites in 2005. These are the biggest websites as of last year. Now, the data is not available for 2020 yet. So these are the websites where everybody hangs out now. And this is where we get to, I think, the biggest difference between the internet and the other media we've talked about this semester is that this is all user-generated content except for Google and Yahoo. And Amazon. We are, except for the reviews, we are the creators of the content on the most popular websites in 2019. I imagine for 2020 it'll probably be very similar to this list. But it's user-generated content, so we're not just consuming internet material. We are creating it and sharing it and creating communities that would have been impossible 20 years ago. It's like magic. Oh, and Netflix. Oops. And so let's look at some website baby pictures just for fun. Here's Google, the Facebook, Amazon, Yahoo, Twitter, Wikipedia. And here's YouTube's baby picture. So we're going to talk a little bit about internet use rate and penetration rates. So if you look at this chart, and this is a couple years old, this was the most recent one that I could find. The largest chunk is East Asia and Pacific, so that's China. That's the largest group of internet users. See that? And North America is the green stripe near the bottom. Yet, this chart shows internet penetration rates. And look, if we're looking at Southeastern Asia, only 2/3 of the population is actually online, and they're already the biggest chunk. So if you look at this chart, the future of the internet is Eastern Asia, Southern Africa, Southeastern Asia, Central America, because most Europeans and most people in North America are already on it. So the growth is going to happen in Asia, Central America, and Africa. That's where the growth of the internet is going to be. And Asia uses almost half of the total internet use in the world. It's amazing. It's amazing. And yet, remember, they only have a 66% penetration rate. And China, we have to remember that Google has written, I'm talking about Google now. I'm flittering around right now for some reason, sorry. Google has written agreements with several countries that in order to do business in that country, they will block search results. So in order to do business in China, Google made the concessions that these terms would not come up. Anything about Tibet, they've added anything about Hong Kong, anything about the Tiananmen Square massacre. You can't search Catholic Church, you can't search democracy, and you also can't get any international news sources there. So they're trying very hard to keep any information from the outside world coming in. It's going to be a challenge, a definite challenge. But we're going to talk more about internet censorship and what's legal and what's not when we're in class this week. So this kind of gives you a little taste of what we're talking about. Okay, see ya.